Let's try that again. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. How are you guys doing? I mute myself now because I get feedback when I do that intro. So good to see everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I don't know where you're at or when you're watching this, but welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Quinn Jacobson, and this is the Studio Q Show Live. And we have something interesting for you today, I think. I've got two recommended watches and two recommended readings. A little very, very different at the end of the show. We'll talk about that. Hello, Christian and Thilo. Good to see you guys coming in. We'll let people jump in here on YouTube and whatever you're watching. And welcome, Jeffrey and Kagi. Good to see you guys in the live arena. I like to have somebody to talk to. Although I would do this alone too. But it's nice to have people in here. Hello, Tom. Good to see Tom in here. Remember last week we talked about having in search of that perfect negative process. We talked about the albumin, collodio-albumin process. Hello, Hugo. Good to see you. Good morning. Good morning. And look at Mr. Hank from Holland is in. Good to see you, brother. We talked about the collodio-albumin process, and we're going to continue on that today. And we'll jump right on in and start this show up because we know we have a lot to do. Hey, Paul Smith. Good evening, I guess, in the UK or thereabouts. Good to see you, brother. Always good to see everybody, actually. It's always nice to have people jump in. I like people watching it live if they can. I know people are busy. We have lives to lead. This is a kind of an ancillary thing, and that's all good. I'm good with however and whenever you want to watch it, but it's nice to have you live if you can make it. So here we are, 16 October 2021. It's a Saturday where I'm at. I don't know, it might be a Friday or a Sunday where you're at, no problem, but it is that way. This is the collodio-albumin process again, but we're going to look at two variations today. Mr. Mads of Manchester, I love this. It's so funny. Mr. Mads of Manchester and Joseph Sidebotham. This is the inventor of the process, and we're going to look at his 1861 process. News and social media, a little bit. Technical questions and answers, and like I said, I have a couple on each category: recommended reading and watching. So we'll get to that. First up, guess what? I am busy building my darkroom in my building. So we've got 600 square feet, more or less, más o menos, right? 60 square meters, about 16 feet high, 5 meters. That's the size of my building. My darkroom's going to be about 200 square feet or 20 square meters, and I'll have a 400 square foot or 40 square meter processing prints area to work in, that kind of thing. So that's where I'm at. I'm so far up in the hills. My truck isn't big enough to haul this material. Some of it's very long, very heavy. So I had to make a delivery. That took a long time, but it's on its way. And I think after next week, I'm going to take some time and probably just come back to you in this studio and come back with experiments and show you some technical stuff and kind of recap like I've been talking about for weeks. So that's my news, some news on my side. And then look at this on Facebook the other day. I don't know when it was. I guess it was the 10th of October, huh? I guess so. A few days ago. I posted 3 years ago this very collodio-albumin process from Mr. Mads. And this stuff is only for a select few people. I'm not entertaining. I'm not funny. I'm not trying to make a living doing this stuff. So I just put information out there. And if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. So these processes just kind of fall by the wayside a lot of the times. But it was very interesting. This popped up in my feed. It said, hey, you've got a memory or whatever. I said, what? The Collodio-albumin? I just did a show on that. And so, 3 years ago. Yeah, 3 years ago. So your memory. So I thought that was interesting. We're actually going to go over this process today. So it's kind of fitting. So I thought I'd share that just for fun. And again, to recap, what is this collodio-albumin process? This is for making negatives. We're in search of this perfect process to make this near perfect negative as close as we can get. Details, printing ability, all that all that kind of good stuff. So this is identical to the albumin on glass, but it's got a layer of bromo-iodized collodion before the iodized albumin goes on. So there's a couple of binders in there. We call a double binder. Estimations and approximations say it gives more detail, clarity and sensitivity, and we can see that in the exposures. And this is attributed to Joseph Sidebotham in 1861. Was much less sensitive. They said they had tended to have harder contrast in the wet plate process. While the first was acknowledged by Sidebotham, the latter was disputed by him, indicating the fact that 1862 gold medal for the best landscape photography was made with this process, collodio-albumin negative. And last week, this had a typo in it that had the same 1861. It couldn't have been 1861. It was 1863 in Recreative Science, thereabouts. So just to clarify that. So there's some another quick recap on what this process is that we're talking about. This is collodion and albumin as the binder and making negatives. So here's Mr. Mad of Manchester, Recipes and Methods. You'll see in both of these versus what we did last week, you'll see in both of these they're a little bit different in how they approach it. So let's start with this. This is, he says, many modifications. And this, by the way, I'll show you on the next slide, where this comes from. But many modifications of this process have been proposed and practiced with more or less success. Mr. Mad of Manchester has perhaps, of all operators, been the most successful on large plates. The following is his mode of procedure. Coat the clean glass with bromo-iodized collodion in the usual way. So right off the bat, we're going to talk about using your bromo-iodized collodion right off the bat, right? So not just iodized collodion, but bromo-iodized collodion to do this process. After allowing the film to set well, sensitize in the ordinary silver nitrate bath. The collodion should be, collodion give a very thick and creamy film. It must be reduced by adding ether. Remember, we went over all of this in Estabrook's books, right? We talked about the thickness of collodion. We talked about what that means. Alcohol, the solids, alcohol and ether. We talked about all that. And we want this somewhat creamy, semi-opaque layer for making negatives. And this is what he's talking about here. If it should give a very thick and creamy film, it must be reduced by adding ether, meaning you probably over-iodized it. After sensitizing for the usual time, 2 or 3 minutes, maybe say 2 to 5 minutes, depending on the weather, temperature, the plate must be well washed and then placed in a dish containing a weak solution of potassium iodide and water, about 1 grain to the ounce of water. You can figure that out. That's 0.065 grams for 2 or 3 minutes, gently moving the dish in the meanwhile. Rinse with tap water and drain a minute. And then we go. So he's collodionized the plate. He sensitized it in the silver bath. He put it in a very, very weak distilled water bath with a little bit of Ki, potassium iodide in there. And now he's took it out, rinsed it with tap water. Now he's going to let it drain for a minute. And this is where you pour the iodized albumin on it. So let's talk about how you make that iodized albumin according to Mr. Mad. So 10 egg whites, 50 grains of Ki or potassium iodide. That's 3.24 grams of potassium iodide. 10 grams of potassium bromide. That's 0.65 grams of potassium bromide, KBr. And 6.16 mils of liquid ammonia, or 100 minims, and into 2.5 ounces of water, or 74 mils of DH2O. So here we have the addition of a couple of things, right? Particularly the ammonia, looking for that alkalinity, that basic reaction. Bromides, potassium salts, basically. We have potassium salts again in here, but a bromide and ammonia. And now what we're going to do is take that mixture, dissolve the iodide, bromide, and water, and add the ammonia. And you can get ammonia anywhere. You can get pure ammonia. Like if you're in the States, you can get it on Amazon. North America, I'm sure you can get it on Amazon. And probably you can in Europe too. A straight, clean ammonia is easy to find. You do not want this stuff around your silver bath, though. Be very, very cognizant of how you store ammonia. It will destroy your silver bath in a heartbeat. So just keep that in mind. So dissolve the salts in water and then add the ammonia. Mix all together with the albumin. Beat the whole into a froth. Let it settle. Let it settle until the froth is subsided into the liquid form. Filter through the muslin into a stock bottle. Decant a portion. Add to the previously washed and still wet film. Apply the solution twice. So check that out. What's the difference here? We're just letting it settle for a little while. Once we have that liquid, we can take that froth off and go ahead and pour it on that wet collodionized plate. And he says, do it twice, actually. And again, we talked about this last week where you're getting rid of that distilled water first. And so you pour that. Remember that B bottle that we had last week that we poured at the iodized albumin on, and then we poured the real coating on? It's the same thing, but it's just getting rid of that distilled water. So apply the solution twice. Now allow the plate to drain for 5 or 10 minutes and dry it rapidly before a clear, bright fire. You could use a hair dryer or a nice warm room and make it quite hot. These plates may be kept till required for sensitizing. To resensitize the plate, it's only necessary to dip it for 1 minute into the acetate bath, nitrate bath, right? Acetonitrate bath with kaolin, and filtering make it clear again. So we talked about China clay last week. We talked about, I've done a lot of albumin printing, and you float egg whites on your paper on the albumin, silver nitrate, 12, 15%, whatever you're using. That stuff turns red. Kaolin or China clay, whatever you want to call it. You put it in your bottle, shake it up, let it settle down. You can decant the silver off it, cleans it up real nice. That's what he's talking about here. Makes it clear again, but some operators prefer to pour a little of the silver nitrate solution on and off the plate a few times and then throw the residue into the waste silver jar. Plates are so prepared will keep in good condition for 6 to 8 weeks in cold weather. Wow, that's really super nice, man. And this time of year, at least in the northern hemisphere, we're talking a month and a half, 2 months actually, So in cold weather, but in hot weather, it's advisable not to trust their efficiency more than a fortnight or 2 weeks. What's a fortnight? 2 weeks. So you still have a lot of wiggle room there to make dry plates and collodion. And again, these are highly detailed, super good clarity, all that good stuff we've talked about, that perfect negative. They're developed as follows. Take the exposed plate and pass it over the surface of a little clean water till the film is thoroughly moistened. I have a little distilled squirt bottle that I use to moisten plates with. Always use distilled water, always, unless you've washed silver away or you don't have silver nitrate involved. Always use distilled water. Moisten that plate after the exposure. Then take a plain pyrogallic solution, say 2 or 3 grains to the ounce of water, and pour it on the plate. The sky and highlights will appear almost immediately if the exposure has been rightly timed and ultimately feeble indication of details. So he's saying the sky will pop up almost right away, kind of like wet collodion, and then you'll get this feeble, weak, lesser so in the less exposed areas. So, and we know what pyrogallic acid, 2 or 3 grains, we know what that is, right? So the picture now requires intensity, which is given by the following solution. So you've exposed it, you've moistened it, you put that weak pyro on there, pop that sky up, got some feeble details in it. Now we're really going to pop with this developer or redeveloper. So pyrogallic acid, 2 grains, 0.13 grams of pyrogallic acid, 0.13 grams, of citric acid, and 3 drops of Agno 3. That's a 4.4% solution or 20 grain silver solution. Pour quantity sufficient, or QS as they call it in the old literature, of this on the plate until the requisite printing density is obtained. Numerous modifications of this excellent dry process have been devised and worked, but the above may be considered a good starting point for the photographer to alter according to his taste. So what they're talking about here is this is something even a beginner could do, and you're going to get good results from this. If you go through these steps, you'll get good results. You'll make a really good negative. Far easier than wet collodion negatives, getting wet collodion negatives, the proper density. I'm not talking about a soft negative that we'll print on developing out paper. I'm talking about true pot printing negatives. And this is what we're talking about. So don't confuse that. If you haven't got this book, this is where I got Mr. Manchester's recipe, Guide to Dry Plate Process Photography. And there's a whole bunch of stuff in there. You can look that up on Google Books, download it. It's great. It's a modern writing. I think it was 2011 or 2016 or something. Great translations over from the old literature. Grab that book, especially if you're into dry processes, which we all should be, really. We should be looking, even if we don't use them, we should be understand them and incorporate those ideas to make our own wet collodion positives, negatives, whatever we're doing better. The negative then should be fixed with hyposulfite of soda, right? Sodium thiosulfate, because potassium cyanide will always weaken or destroy the semi-organic deposit. Remember that, this double binder, just as surely as if the image were a positive print on paper. So you don't want to use, I never use cyanide on my prints, right? I use it on my glass. I use it on, my regular collodion stuff. But we have this albumin in here. We have this double binder, so we have to be cautious. I always use hypo. Hey, Dale, good to see you. As a suggestion, keep the bloody ammonia out of the darkroom. Yeah, that's what I was telling him, Dale. I don't know if you were in here, but ammonia, you'll read in the literature, Dale had a run-in with ammonia. It finds its way into the silver bath. It's horrible. And once you start getting these black deposits, and it's ammonia, if you've had a bottle of ammonia around. But it's really important if you're going to fume paper or you're going to work in Mr. Mad's process, or you're going to do other things. And you're going to see even in Sidebotham's ammonia. So don't be afraid of it. Just be cautious. If you have ammonia, don't keep it in your dark room. Keep it sealed up in a cooler somewhere away from especially your silver bath. So there's Mr. Mad's process. Really straightforward. I love it. Great. I can't wait to get on some of this stuff. So let's jump over to Joseph Sidebotham. This is the inventor. He's also from Manchester. Recreative Science, again, a record of remembrance and intellectual observation, Volume 2, Groombridge and Sons, Paternoster Row, London, 1861, page 43. That's the source of this material. I always try to give sources. I don't make any of this stuff up. I try to translate it into more modern English and weights and measurements, try to get that right. So it makes it a little easier for people that want to work in this. But that's where this is from. This is the original recipe and method from 1861. So let's read Mr. Sidebotham's work here. For those who wish to practice landscape photography or to take photographs of any objects at a distance from the operating room, meaning your dark room, what is termed a dry process is indispensable. Great ingenuity has been brought to bear in the innovation of photographic tents, portable operating rooms, dark boxes, vans, and even photographic cabs and wheelbarrows. These have for their object to render the collodion process in its simplicity capable of being used in the field, and certainly the idea of pitching one's tent in a shady nook near a stream in the midst of a beautiful scenery, taking negatives and knowing that they are good before one leaves a spot is rather captivating. Of course, yes. But unfortunately, there is much to dispel the illusion. The great weight and bulk of the tent and bath, bottles and chemicals, plate box and plates, besides the camera and stand, and the most host of difficulties and annoyances which are insparable from the tent life, are such that few amateurs care to go out with the tent as a second time. I love that. I love how he says, try this once, and you're going to say, wait a minute, I can't do this again. This is over the top. And I've heard that personally too. The reason why I've gone down this path, and I've looked at these for years, and I've tried several of them in the past. One of the reasons I'm revisiting this is not only to people have written me and asked about what's the perfect negative, what are some of the processes you could work in. I am looking at this project, and I am going into some very difficult spaces to make these images. And I may employ or use one of these alternatives to the wet collodion negative to get my work. I don't know yet, because my ultimate image is going to be a oil print on glass, but I do need the negative, and the better negative that I can get, the better oil print on glass I'm going to be able to make. But primarily, it's getting access without having to, deal with wind, packing a dark box up a mountain, all this stuff, right? I'd rather load, I just found my plate holders. I'd rather load 3 or 4 plate holders, go out to a location, do a couple of tests on a dry process, and come back and see what I get. So anyway, I love how he says, let them go out one time and see if they want to go back out again. And a lot of people don't. A lot of people are annoyed with having to have a dark room with you. With a dry process, a person may go from home for several weeks with no other photographic encumbrance but his portable camera and a stand and a parcel of sensitive plates, take the views he wishes, return home to develop them at his leisure. It is sometimes stated that a dry process can never produce pictures equal to a wet one, that the negatives are hard and wanting an atmospheric effect. Let's talk about this real quick, because this is one of the drawbacks for me. I personally don't really care for dry gelatin plates. I just don't like the look of them. It looks kind of like crappy film to me, if you will. I mean, I know don't write me and tell me that I'm off kilter here. I get it. There are some good dry plates, but if you're going to use dry plates, you might as well just get sheet film, right? Use some Triax or something in the silver gelatin realm. I don't like the look. And what he talks about, this atmospheric effect, one of the beautiful things about wet collodion is it has that. You can tell a collodion image, a wet collodion image, right? You can see that, a print or a positive, a print specifically, you can see that. And it really comes through when you take a wet collodion negative and do an oil print with it. It really, that atmospheric effect, that's what he's talking about. So negatives are hard and wanting an atmospheric effect. That's what he's talking about. This is, we're human beings. It doesn't matter when we're born. This is what they were going through back in the day. Hey, these dry processes just don't look as good as the wet ones, right? So in answer to this, a prize medal was recently offered by the Photographic Society of Scotland for the best landscape for the best landscape by any process. Open to all the world, the medal was awarded to a landscape taken by the Collodio-Albumin process, which is the one now to be described. That's what we talked about in the previous slide. So he's making a case, and who was it that made it? What optic? What light? What was the content? I mean, that's very subjective. But he's trying to make the point that it can compete with any of these processes of the day, and wet ones included specifically. Many processes have been invented for the preparation of a sensitive dry plates, and every month sees the publication of 1 or 2 new ones. Can you imagine? I go through this literature, and you go through photographic news, those volumes, 700 and 800 page volumes of those, and there's always somebody coming out with something. It's just incredible. So always something new to look at every month or two. But none of them appear to equal this in certainty and the beauty of the negatives. I like to read that. I like that. The apparatus required in addition to that for the wet collodion process are a glass bath and dipper for the silver nitrate. In this case, it's silver acetate bath. 2 4-ounce beakers, glasses and small funnel. It just kind of gives you some equipment there. The chemicals required are the solution of silver nitrate, acidic silver nitrate, prepared albumin, prepared collodion for the dry process. Remember, bromo iodized, the same stuff you're using, basically. Pyrogallic developing solution, silver developing solution. As stated in the former paper, the best plan for an amateur who has not much time at his command, so he's giving some advice here, is to get the most of his solutions as nearly ready for use as possible and to procure them from a person who understands the process and therefore knows exactly what is requisite. The formulas are, however, here given for the solutions for those who prepare to make their own. So that's what we do today as well, too, right? You can go to a commercial collodion shop and buy your collodion and buy this and that. And some of them, I get emails every once in a while, and they give me a link, and I go into a shop, and they're preparing some pretty sophisticated stuff now. So, and it's good. They understand the differences in some of the collodions and things like that. So I can understand, especially back in the day, why this was probably, buy it here, mix it, or buy it here. You don't have to mix it at home, pour it on your plate, go through these procedures. But we like to make our own, and nobody that I know is offering Collodio-albumin double binder chemistry. So you're going to have to make this on your own. So here we go. Prepared albumin. So he breaks it down into 1 egg white, 29.6 mils of egg white, 7.4 mils of DH2O, distilled water, 0.62 mils, again, there you go, liquid ammonia, 0.33 of potassium iodide, 0.6065, 0.065 potassium bromide, and 0.062 mils of iodine. Talked last week or the week before about making your own iodine out of hydrogen peroxide and Ki. That's how I make mine. Very difficult to get sometimes because of the methamphetamine production. So you can make your own. Write me if you want to learn how to do that or need instructions. I'm happy to help you with that. So there's your prepared iodized and bromized. This is bromo-iodized albumin. Let's be specific about that. This is bromo-iodized albumin, just like bromo-iodized collodion. You have a bromide and an iodide in there. And now you got your silver nitrate bath, or your acetonitrate bath. And we call it that because there's glacial acetic acid in it. We're acidifying it for this process. So again, 29.6 mils of DH2O. You can extrapolate these out, right? 3.24 grams of silver nitrate, 0.65 grams of KBr. And again, I got that wrong. Sorry. I got to ignore that liquid. No liquid ammonia in your silver nitrate there. I probably copied that over. But I'm sorry. I didn't get that. That is wrong. Hold on here. We'll do a live edit here. So a 40 grain bath. Sorry, I can't do it live. A 40 grain bath, 25 minims of glacial acetic acid, and 1 ounce of distilled water. I missed that one. Sorry. So pyrogalic acid developer. Again, 29.6 mils of DH2O, 0.13 grams of pyro, and 0.13 grams of citric acid. So you have your reducer and your restrainer in there. And then you have what we'd call a redeveloper, more or less, 148 mils of DH2O and 0.65 of silver nitrate. That's what you have in the, I'll come back to you next week and clarify that. I can clarify it now. Let me fix that right on the spot. We have time here. I'm going to stop sharing that just for a second. I'm going to fix that right now. We have 1 ounce of water. That's right. 40 grain. We know what a 40 grain bath is, right? Anybody? We have a 40 grain bath, 2.6 grams. Let me just put that in there. I'll come back. And then that way people won't say, oh my God, you didn't fix that stuff. What's going on here? Wow. Sorry, hold on. I'm so OCD, I can't let that. You can tell I had a busy week, right? Let me get in here and fix that thing. So we have, that's distilled water. Okay, so what do we have for? We have 2.6 grams of silver nitrate. 0.64 grams of silver nitrate, 2.6 grams. Silver nitrate and glacial acetic acid. Let's do that one. And then we'll have it. How many minims of glacial acetic acid? I'll call that GAA. Glacial acetic acid. Minims. Boy, what a measurement, huh? Minims. We have 25 of those. Okay. Let me just check that. 40 grain, 2.6. Yep. Okay. There we go. All right. Let's try this again, everybody. Share that screen. Proves I'm human, right? I make mistakes. Come on. Not just overlook that. So here we go. The silver nitrate bath, which is glacial acidic acid heavy, right? 29.6 mils, 2.6 grams of silver nitrate. So basically a 40 grain bath, and 1.5 mils of glacial acidic acid. So you can extrapolate that out and see where you're at, how much you want to make, a half a liter, a whole liter, whatever you want to do. But that's correct. Again, I apologize for that. I overlooked it somehow. And then we have the fixing solution. After you do that, regular old fixing solution. Pour collodion on the plate, immerse it in the silver nitrate bath as in the ordinary collodion process. When it's ready, remove it to a dish of water, agitate it a little, and then take out the plate. Wash it under a gentle stream of water, allow it to drain for half a minute, then pour on some of the prepared albumin. Let it flow over, drain it off one corner. Repeat this 4 times, he says. And each time pour off in a different container, taking care to avoid bubbles and dust. A good plan is to have 2 thin beaker glasses of the same size in a small funnel fitting into one of them, plugged with a bit of fine sponge. He's basically filtering it out. Pour the albumin from the plate into this from the plate into this funnel. The sponge will filter all the bubbles and leave it clear. When the albumin has been used out of B, change the funnel to B and pour from A. So basically, he's just talking about, I don't know if you've ever worked with albumin, once you start pouring that stuff around, bubbles, and they don't pop either. I mean, they're like hardcore bubbles. They will not pop. It's difficult to do that. So he's just recommending a methodology to keep the bubbles away so you can reuse that albumin. So he wants you to do this several times. He wants you to do this 4 times, right? So you need a method, however you figure that out, to drain this off and reuse, because you're not going to have 10 liters of albumin. Well, if you have a liter of albumin and doing this, you could get away with doing a few plates without having to do this. But when the albumin has well drained from the plate, dry it over a fire or stove, the prepared side toward the fire. When cool, store it in a plate box. So again, they're recommending heating this up to dry it so it doesn't dry spontaneously or naturally. In this state, the plate is not sensitive to light and will keep good for a very long time. It is consequently advisable, when all the apparatus and materials are in order, to prepare several dozen of plates for future use. If you like the process, that's probably not a bad idea, right? From 15 to 20 plates may be prepared in an hour by arranging the different operations so as not to lose time between each in waiting. The preparation of the plates should be conducted in the darkroom till the albumin has been poured on, when they may be exposed without injury to daylight. So, because you've got a sensitized collodion plate in the beginning, so he's talking about doing the operation. Then you get the albumin on, you're good to go. To render the plate sensitive, immerse for about a half a minute in the acetonitrate bath, or the acetate bath. Then place in a dish of water afterwards. Wash very well under a stream of water and rear up to dry. When quite dry, put them in the dark frames and plate box, or in a case of traveling. The plates may be packed together, a sheet of clean writing paper between each. So there you go. That sounds scary to me, but you could do that, I guess. And well wrapped in several folds of paper. Packed in this way will keep good for 3 or 4 weeks, even in very hot weather. That is amazing. We all have plate boxes, so you could fill your plate box up, and as long as it's fairly light tight, right? 3 to 4 weeks in hot weather. So, I know he's just writing this. We'll see. We'll do some tests and find out. The exposure required varies according to the view to be taken, the amount of light, focus of lens, etc. For a picture of well-lighted landscape, Ross's orthographic lens, that's kind of interesting. He specifically calls out a lens with medium stop being used. So I would say, F11, F8, F11. about 5 minutes are sufficient. Same views would require even 2 or 3 times as much, but a trial or two will give the amount of information than as many volumes written on the subject. So you can see, an F11 stop, F8, 11 stop, a well-lit landscape, 5 minutes. So we're talking, dry collodion stuff here, which would make sense, right? Even with that albumin layer binder on there, which is very interesting. Jeffrey says, for the fix, will the ratio of sodium thiowater make much difference in the density of the plate? No, it won't. You'll gain no density. All that sodium thiosulfate is doing is removing the unexposed silver. It will have no bearing. It'll just take longer if you mix it weak. This is pretty strong. I mean, this is up there. This is you can do the math on it, but it's fairly strong. But it will have no bearing on the density at all. That's just removing the unexposed silver. But good question. I would love to hear what he says about Waldeck's book. And what specifically in Waldeck's book? What are you referring to there? I'd like to know. I love Waldeck's book. Chopper Carson, good to see you. Just in general, when these recipes call for hydrogen peroxide, is it 3 or 6? Didn't see anything else. 3. Hydrogen peroxide will be a 3% hydrogen peroxide. Yes, exactly right. That if you're talking about making iodine, that's a 3% hydrogen peroxide that you get today. But good question there as well. So pretty straightforward stuff. I like both of these. I like Mr. Mads and I like the original one here. So let's go on to the development of the image, Sidebotham. Remove the plate from the dark frame. Pour water as to wet the surface, just like Mr. Mads. Excuse me. Then place it face upwards on a leveling stand. They love to use leveling stands, like a daguerreotype gilding stand. They love to use stands in wet collodion, any plates. They just didn't like to freehand it. I like to freehand it, but place it face upwards on the leveling stand and pour on from the developing cup some of the pyrogallic solution. Pour this on and off once or twice, kind of like redevelopment, right? On and off once or twice, and then allow it to remain for a few minutes. Then pour it off and mix with 3 or 4 drops of the silver developing solution. You saw that solution in the front there, right? And pour it on and off again several times. The image will now appear and keep gaining intensity until finished. Should the development be very slow, a little more silver solution should be added. But as little silver should be used as possible, as it is apt to decompose a pyrogallic solution and turn it black. Turn it into ink, right? When it must be thrown away and then the plate washed before the fresh solution is used. So if you do use a lot of that and you have this black appear, wash the plate off and do it again. G. McGee says nothing specific. Perhaps he has it in his book. The only one I know. Yeah, I get you. The only one that I know is the Silver Sunbeam. Probably has this. The more exhaustive tomes will have these kind of obscure. This is somewhat obscure. This didn't last. The Collodio-Albumin did not last long. It just didn't. It was, and especially as dry plates came along, Maddox in 1867, this stuff went away real quick. Wet collodion competed with it. Guys got really good at that. So, but anyway, so pour on the pyrogallic acid. Use the silver. Don't use too much. It'll decompose, turn black. Wash it off if that happens. As in the collodion process, an underdeveloped negative has the lights and the shades in too great contrast. One overexposed has too little. Much may be done in development to remedy this. Again, this is another beautiful thing about these dry processes. You have some ability to correct exposure sometimes. Pyrogallic acid develops the image. Silver nitrate intensifies it. To fix the image, place it in a plate, the plate in a dish containing the hypo solution. When the blue film has disappeared, wash it well with water, rear it up to dry, and afterwards varnish it with a French varnish. The French varnish is a shellac varnish. It really is all they're saying there. The above process is much longer in description than in practice. Isn't that true? They all seem to be wordy, and then you get in there and you do it. Wow, this was okay. This is quick. It requires care and patience, but with these and the use of suitable chemicals, success is certain. And when one considers how valuable a good negative on account of very power to produce an unlimited number of prints superior to any drawings in beauty and accuracy, the time taken in its production is very marvelously short. Joseph Sidebotham, Manchester. Yes, it's a good verbiage there. Of course, it's his process. He's going to brag it up, but I cannot wait to give this guy a try and see if his words live up to the process. While I do like dry collodion, I don't like it as much as wet collodion. It doesn't have remember that what he just said here, that atmospheric look and feel. So there it is. There it is. Any questions on that? I know we went fast through it, but it is. We've talked about this enough that you should have a pretty good indication of how marvelous the results should be, as he says. But you should have a good idea of how to go about this process. And all these are reiterated. The double binder process we've talked about 2 weeks, this one. And before that, we just talked about albumin on glass for a couple of weeks. So they're all very similar. We're just talking about variations of them. But if you have questions, throw them out there. So next week, before I kind of go on my darkroom binge, if you will, we're going to look at the calotype process. I found my video on Martin Becca. I'll share that with you. I've got a couple of them actually. And the book today I'm going to recommend has where I learned calotypy from the book I'm going to recommend. So next week we'll look at that. So here it is. Let me do this. This is primitive photography, a guide to making camera lenses and calotypes. This is where I learned to make calotypes. And in fact, I went through this, and all my notes are in here. And let me share this with you. This is a great book. If you don't have this book, get it. I highly recommend it. Let's see if I can do a solo layup here. Yeah. Oh, look at that. The yellow doesn't. Look at that. Yellow doesn't like that yellow color. Anyway, I synthesized this thing down to 1 page. Wow, that is bizarre. You guys see that? It's I guess it's StreamYard's saying that I don't want that color. Wonder what happens if I put something white behind it. Doesn't help, does it? No. Anyway, I synthesized the calotype process down to 6 steps, and I've made quite a few calotypes in Europe. This is a book, though, starting on page 139, paper negatives. And what he has in here, he has a very unique, it's not the Greenlaw process. It's a very unique one that works very well. I can attest to that. Oh, that's a good one. Let's see. Let's go back here. Would it be too much of a rabbit hole to go down and explain how to neutralize most of these solutions using various recipes? That would, a lot of them are neutralized. What you're doing is you're reducing the compounds to silver. And so the problem with the silver is that you're putting them down a drain. It's a very strong antibacterial compound. It'll kill your septic system if you're on a well, that kind of thing. The more poisonous ones, hypo's not going to do anything. Your collodion, your albumin won't do. You're going to use those binders. Those aren't going anywhere. That kind of thing. So maybe, Chopper, maybe you can write me and ask me specifically, and I can prepare something for a show. If you want to talk about specific compounds, I'd be happy to do that. Drew and Christina. So varnishing is required. Good. I thought somebody might catch that, right? I thought somebody might get that. Why would varnishing be required on this particular process? You got that binder underneath the albumin, which is collodion, which is a hard plastic. So you're going to be liable. You just don't have albumin in glass anymore, like albumin on glass negatives. So you have that other binder. So once you introduce something soft like that, you're going to have a good shellac or sanderac varnish on it. Good question, though. Yes, varnishing is required on that specific process. So, highly recommend that book. If you don't have it, grab it. It's a good one, and he'll show you how to make a camera if you're into that kind of stuff too. Another one. Now we're going to veer off the path here for just a second. Non-photographic related. The Shallows. My book is a little bit older. What the Internet is Doing to Our Brains by Nicholas Carr. This is a very good book. I want to bring up and how this relates to photography and what we're doing. I mean, there's a love-hate relationship I have with social media. I really don't like to be on social media. I really don't like. I have no reason to be. I don't need it. I don't. I don't make my living from this. I have no dependency on it. So it's a little bit of a love-hate relationship. I love working with you guys. I love being out here and trying and interacting with everyone. And I really enjoy the social aspect of it that way. But they're doing some terrible things. I've had this, I don't know how long I've had this book, over 10 years. I read it 10 years ago. My favorite chapter in here is, or two of them, The Juggler's Brain, and then there's one on the Church of Google. He talks about how this is 10 years ago, and he talks about, or maybe longer, and he talks about how the internet is rewiring our brain. A little bit frightening. And the next thing I'm going to recommend here, and I'm going to show you this here. If you want to understand what's happening in the world today, some of this stuff will really give you insight to how we're interacting now and what all this stuff is doing to our head and our minds. If you haven't seen The Social Dilemma, I know a lot of you have. Watch it, and if you've watched it, watch it again, because it is very applicable to how we're living our lives now. And everything I'm doing online, I don't think there's a week that goes by that I wonder, I should just shut everything down. I'll keep my website, I'll keep my blog, I'll do that, but I just feel like I want to shut everything down. And the next video I'm going to recommend you watch, or the next recommended watching here, you'll understand why. But let me play this trailer for those of you that haven't seen this, or those of you that have. Watch it again. I'm going to.
When you go to Google and type in climate change is, you're going to see different results depending on where you live and the particular things that Google knows about your interests.
That's not by accident. That's a design technique.
What I want people to know is that everything they're doing online is being watched, is being tracked. Every single action you take is carefully monitored and recorded.
A lot of people think Google's just a search box and Facebook's just a place to see what my friends are doing. What they don't realize is there's entire teams of engineers whose job is to use your psychology against you.
I was the co-inventor of the Facebook like button.
I was the president of Pinterest,
Google, Twitter, Instagram.
There were meaningful changes happening around the world because of these platforms. I think we were naive about the flip side of that coin.
You get rewarded by hearts, likes, thumbs up, and we conflate that with value, and we conflate it with truth.
A whole generation is more anxious, more depressed.
I always felt like fundamentally it was a force for good. I don't know if I feel that way anymore.
Facebook discovered that they were able to affect real world behavior and emotions without ever triggering the user's awareness. They are completely clueless.
Fake news spreads 6 times faster than true news. We're being bombarded with rumors.
If everyone's entitled to their own facts, there's really no need for people to come together. In fact, there's really no need for people to interact.
We have less control over who we are and what we really believe.
If you want to control the population of your country, there has never been a tool as effective as Facebook.
We built these things and we have a responsibility to change it. The intention could be, how do we make the world better?
If technology creates mass chaos, loneliness, more polarization, more election hacking, more inability to focus on the real issues, we're toast.
This is checkmate on humanity.
So if you don't know who Mrs. Zubhoff is, she was the lady in that video right there. The next thing I'm going to recommend you watch, and I think this is really important.
When you go to
sorry, I think this is really important for us living in this time, and how we're living our lives now. And this virus has really put us in this position. And again, I want to be careful of what I say here, because I get great feedback and I love doing what I do here. And I've got 200 and some videos up there, and I do sometimes go on Facebook. And if I don't go on Facebook, I notice they email me and say, hey, this post, they try to draw me back in. I guess Facebook went down and Instagram went down a week or two ago for several hours. I didn't know about it. It didn't affect me, but it affected a lot of people. And they were emailing me and saying, hey, we're back, this. I mean, they really want to get their claws in you. If you don't know who Miss Zubhoff is, I recommend you watch this VPRO documentary. It's surveillance capitalism. This stuff is scary. This will change your mind about how we're living our lives. And the dilemma here is how do we communicate and do these kinds of things without having the burden of all this other stuff on us? Surveillance capitalism is complex. It's not just about showing you a certain ad because you clicked on something. This stuff is about changing your behavior, and it is serious and it's real. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't do any of that stuff, but I can see how people's attitudes have changed. I can see how people interact differently. I can go online and see all this distress and arguing, and it's just terrible stuff. It's just so disheartening to me that I cannot not address it here, especially for what we're doing and what we're trying to do. Chris says, Chris Fry, thanks for the, absolutely. And I think you'll like this one too. Really surprised that Chopper says, really surprised that nobody's built a computer program to surf the web at night and create a false search and interest products and mess up Google. Yeah, that's a good question. Check this. If you haven't seen Zubhoff's or read her book, it's actually a book. This documentary is on her. It's Surveillance Capitalism. This is what's really scary. We kind of know what Facebook and Instagram and we can kind of see what that's doing to people. But check this out. I want to play this video for you and let her describe what surveillance capitalism is.
So what is surveillance capitalism? So it has long been understood that capitalism evolves by taking things that live outside the marketplace and bringing them into the market so that they can be sold and bought. For example, the idea of nature. With industrial capitalism, nature was dragged into the marketplace and reborn as real estate, land that could be bought and sold. Historians have written about the way in which human activity itself, the kinds of things that people did in their homes, in their cottages, in their back gardens, those activities were brought into the marketplace and reborn as labor that could be assigned an hourly wage, bought and sold in the marketplace. In an interesting way, surveillance capitalism follows in this tradition. And I say interesting because there are other ways in which surveillance capitalism sharply diverges from the norms and principles of capitalism over the centuries. But in this respect, it mirrors this history in that surveillance capitalism has claimed something from outside the market and brought it into the market to sell and buy. But in this case,
The territory that it has claimed is private human experience. Private human experience has been claimed for the marketplace to be sold and purchased as behavioral data. And more specifically, the way this works is that our experience is claimed unilaterally for the taking. Our experience is rendered as behavioral data by the takers. Those behavioral data are then combined with very sophisticated machine intelligence capabilities. The outcome of the computation and behavioral data, the outcome is what I call a prediction product. These are computational predictions of what we will do now, soon, and later. Those predictions are then sold into a new kind of marketplace. What is this marketplace trading in? It's trading in bets on our future behavior. I call it a behavioral futures marketplace. So these prediction products are like futures derivatives, but in this case, they're derivatives of our behavior. So the bottom line, friends, is that our futures are being sold and bought in a new kind of behavioral marketplace.
So that's food for thought. If you don't know her and you've never heard this term and you've never seen this documentary or read her book, I encourage you to do so. I probably have some major changes coming up for myself. I'm in a position now, like I said, where I don't really need to be vulnerable to these kind of conditions. I don't want to lose contact with people, and I hope I don't, or I won't. If I will, if I do make a choice to totally pull myself out of the loop, I will still have my website. I don't know about YouTube. I don't know about YouTube. Doesn't seem to be. I know it's owned by Google, but YouTube doesn't seem to be so involved. But I don't know what I'm going to do. All I know is this is on my mind a lot. And since that whistleblower at Facebook came out a couple of weeks ago and really spilled the beans on what they know and what they've been doing, and profit is more important than people, kind of thing. That is something to consider. And I'm not encouraging. If you like to be on social media and you get something from the likes or the numbers of views or whatever, and you're trying to monetize your stuff, that's your call. I just don't have any need for it in my life. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but there may be some major changes for me, just so you know. And I'm not saying I'm not upset about anything, and the world hasn't crumbled before me. I've thought about this a lot for a long, long time. And now I'm in a position where I don't have to be subjected to this kind of stuff. And I hate to see other people subjected to it. Hey, Mark, good to see you. I loved your Collodion forum when I got started. Yeah, you know what? I still get emails about that. And the reason why Mark Zimmerman was talking about, I opened a Collodion forum in 2003 or so, way back in the day. I've told the story about how I kind of got shot down by the Civil War reenactor saying, "Why are you doing this? We already have a board up on Collodion." I said, "No, this is for artists," kind of, whatever. And, "Oh, it won't do anything." And immediately people were drawn to it. And the reason why that was successful, I think, and it wasn't monetized or anything, but it just showed posts. There was no algorithms involved in it, nothing pushing to your specific things. It was just people posting stuff, trying to moderate it a little bit, so it didn't get out of control. But it didn't have any of those kind of AI algorithm stuff that's trying to capitalize. The bottom line is you're a commodity, and everything and everybody's trying to get the dollar out of your pocket. That's what the bottom line is. And okay, that's fair. That's been going on a long time. But the real problem is when it turns people's lives into messes. And I know there's a lot of people out there, even in the wet plate world, that's tried to monetize this stuff, tried to sell things, YouTube, Patreon, Instagram likes, and do this and that, and trying to get their stuff out there and all that. and it's turned people's lives miserably bad. Never seems to work out, and I am not in that boat. Fortunately, I am not in that arena. I don't need to sell a book. I don't need to sell a workshop. I don't need to sell anything. I want to share information and I want to interact with people. That's all I want to do. But if the cost is subjecting myself to this kind of thing, or more importantly, other people getting subjected to it because they want to see the information I provide or present, or the interaction we have, I don't know how I feel about that. So I'm just considering. That's all. I'm just considering, and I wanted to share that. It's been on my heart and my mind for a very long time, and I just wanted to throw that out there. And if you guys have any I'd love to have you come on and talk about this and share or chat about it or whatever. Share your feelings. If you watch this information, how do you feel about it? I know some of you aren't even on social media, which is awesome. That's a really good thing in my mind. I didn't get sucked up in it. I try to spend as little time as I can on it. I'm still kind of in that weird business mode, and I don't need to be. And that's part of the problem. I'm trying to break out of that mold. I don't need to do this anymore. So I've said that enough. But anyway, I wanted to share that. And I hope you got something out of the show today. I know it's a very right turn right at the end, right? Talking about social media and mind control and the internet's going to get us. And no, I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm just trying to throw stuff out there. Food for thought. We'll always talk about photography as long as we're doing this. Some type of historic process will be involved. But, we had a little sidetrack on death denial and kind of tried to tie that back in with Solomon and art and the denial of death and things like that. So I think even as photographers, we are still human beings, and these things affect our lives, and we're on these platforms, or most of us are. And we should have those discussions if we can. And I would, like I said, I would really love to hear your feedback on stuff and how you feel. Is social media good to you? Do you get depressed? Do you get anxious? Do you worry about the likes? Do you worry about the views? Are you monetizing something? Are you trying to, make a living doing something? And I really feel for people that are in that situation, because the job world's weird. The virus, the world seems, we've said this forever, but the world seems super upside down now. And I don't want to add to that chaos. I'd like to be an asset, not a liability to it. So if I continue to do these things, it will be probably just on YouTube and probably just my blog or my website and kind of an email, and kind of keep it minimal. And until I see something on YouTube that's trying to manipulate us or do something weird, I hope you don't watch any commercials on my shows. I don't think you do, because I'm nothing. You should see nothing like that. So I try to click all the buttons that say, no, don't do that. Don't, they're always sending me, oh, you can monetize this. You can do, no. I don't want any of that stuff. I don't, this isn't about that. So if we can keep this clean, and I don't know about Facebook. I don't know about Instagram, and people, oh, you got 35,000 people on Instagram. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. I don't really, it has no effect on my life. So interested on getting, G McGee says, nope, at this point, I don't have to worry about social media. Good. And Jeffrey's not on social media, I don't think. And so a lot of you are already ahead of the game, which is awesome. I respect that completely. And I can speak for myself. You're not missing anything. and if you go into Mrs. Zuboff's book or watch that documentary, you'll really know that you're ahead of the game on that stuff. So anyway, I'll quit ranting about this. Thank you so much for joining me today on the show. I hope you got something out of it. I appreciate your time, your attention, and we'll keep the commerce out of it as much as we can. We're not trying to do any mind control on you and have you buy anything here. We just want to share information as a small little community with a similar interest and trying to share information. So send me your feedback. Let me know what you want to see or do, and we'll do our best. Chopper, if you want to go into some of those chemical disposals, neutralizing stuff, something you have specific, send it to me. If you have something you want to show on a session here, let me know. Next week, we'll go into calotypy. We'll look at some calotypy and see making calotypes and see if you have any interest in that. I hope it was worth your time. I appreciate your hour or so. So we'll see you next Saturday. Ciao. Stay healthy and stay happy. Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you, Hank. Thank you. Thanks, Jeffrey. Good to see KG, everybody. Thank you so much.